Good morning students, my name is Sachin Prakash and I am a senior faculty of chemistry at Sri Chaitanya IIT Academy. Today we are going to discuss the JEE Mains paper which was conducted on 5th of September morning session. Okay, so let us start with the paper discussion. Let us look into question number 1. So question number 1 is basically the potential energy curve for the hydrogen molecule as a function of internuclear distance. Okay, so you see, when two hydrogen atoms are approaching each other, then the potential energy of the system will decrease. Okay. Now, that R basically represents the distance of separation between the two hydrogen atoms. Okay. So, the potential energy will be decreasing when these two atoms are coming together, and that gives us the potential well diagram. Okay. So, it will be looking something like this. Okay. So, this will be representing the 0. Okay. So, initially when the two hydrogen atoms are far apart from each other, the potential energy of the system is 0. Okay. When they start approaching, the potential energy will start decreasing. Okay, so it will be looking something like this. Okay, so it will be starting to decrease and then it will be increasing. Okay, so it looks something like this. Okay, now you see the potential energy will be decreasing till it reaches a minimum value, and that minimum value is this one. Okay, and after that, so up to this part, okay, the attractive forces are dominating, and that is why the potential energy is decreasing. Okay, and this distance up to which the potential energy is decreasing, the system will keep on losing energy. Okay. So, let us say that this value is R naught, then if you decrease the separation below R naught, then the potential energy of the system will start increasing because the repulsive forces will be dominating. Dominates, okay, in this region. So, the distance R naught is an equilibrium distance at which the potential energy of the system will be minimum, and that will be the bond length. So, for hydrogen molecule, the bond length which is represented by R naught will be 72 picometers, and the bond energy which is corresponding to the minimum potential energy of the system, that is the energy which is released, its magnitude will be 436 kilojoule per mole. Okay. Now, if we see all these 4 diagrams, option 2, you see it is going something in a decreasing way, and after some point it is starting to increase. So, here you see the attractive forces are dominating, and here the repulsive forces are dominating. So, this should be the answer. Okay, let's move to question number 2. Okay, so in question number 2 it is saying that the values of crystal field stabilization energies for a high spin D6 metal complex, okay, in octahedral and tetrahedral fields are respectively. Okay, now you see when you are talking about D6 configuration, this means that D6 means that out in the 5d orbitals, and it is high spin. This means that it will be having this type of configuration. Okay. Now, we know that when you are talking about CFSE, there will be splitting of d orbitals. So, if you are talking about octahedral, okay, in octahedral the d orbitals will be splitting into EG and T2G levels. With T2G, so it will be something like this. Okay. And this will be Eg. Okay. Now you see, when you're talking about the arrangement of electrons, since it is a high spin complex, there will be no forced pairing. Okay, this means that as per the Hund's rule, we'll be filling all the electrons singly and then like this. Okay, so in this case, this will be the configuration. Now you see, for each Eg electron, the crystal field stabilization energy contribution will be plus 0.6 delta naught, and for each T2G electron, the crystal field stabilization energy per electron will be minus 0.4 delta naught. Okay, so if you are talking about the CFSE calculation, the total crystal field stabilization energy will be 2 into 0.6 delta naught plus minus 0.4 delta naught into 4. Okay, so this will be 1.2 delta naught minus 1.6 delta naught, and that will be minus of 0.4 delta naught. Okay, so this will be the crystal field stabilization energy for the octahedral field when you are having a D6 ion in a high spin configuration. Okay, next we talk about tetrahedral. Now in tetrahedral complex, what happens is that the positions of Eg and T2G orbitals become reverse. Now the T2G is of higher energy and the Eg is of lower energy. So if we are drawing it for tetrahedral, okay, then the energy levels will be something like this. Okay, so this is your T2G, which will be of higher energy. 1 minute. And the Eg will be of lower energy. Okay. Now the energy of T2G orbital, in this case, the CFSE is given by delta T, delta tetrahedral. Okay, so for T2G, it will be 0.4 delta T, okay, with a plus sign, and for Eg, it will be minus of 0.6 delta T. 1 minute. Minus of 0.6 delta T. Okay. Now, if we are arranging electrons in a tetrahedral arrangement, okay, then we have to follow the Hund's rule. Means first all the orbitals will be singly occupied, and always remember one thing, in tetrahedral arrangement, there won't be any, what you say, as low spin complex, there won't be any forced pairing. So first electron will come like this, then this, and this, and then the pairing will start taking place. Okay. So now you see you have 3 electrons in T2G and 3 electrons in Eg. So the CFSE calculation will be something like this. It will be 3 into 0.4 delta T plus minus of 0.6 delta T, okay, into 3. Okay. So it will be equal to 1.2 delta T minus 1.8 delta T. That will be equal to minus of 0.6 delta T. Okay. So in this case, you see for octahedral, my value is coming out to be minus 0.4 delta naught, and for tetrahedral, it is coming out to be minus 0.6 delta T. So the correct option will be option 1. Okay. Okay. In the third question, they are asking the increasing order of basicity of the following compounds. Okay. Now, in option A, there should be, this is an extra carbon, it should have been it is actually pyridine. Okay. So, and B is what you call as pyrrole. Okay. And N is, C is pyrrolidine, and D is imidazole. So, I am showing the lone pairs here, because it is the lone pairs which will be deciding the basicity. Okay. Now, you see, they are asking the order. Okay. Now, you see, in basicity comparison, there are two important factors which we should keep in mind. Okay. First is availability of lone pair, and second is the stability of the cation. Okay. Now, you see, if the lone pair is localized, then the basicity will be more. If the lone pair is delocalized, the basicity decreases. So, first we have to check in which case the lone pair is delocalized, because in that case the basicity will be very less. Now, out of this, if you see in this case, okay, the pyridine lone pair is localized in a sp2 orbital. So, this is an sp2 lone pair and it is localized. Okay. Okay. Now, in the case of pyrrole, this lone pair is what we call as delocalized. Okay. So, because you know delocalization of this lone pair will lead to aromatic stabilization of the molecule. Okay. So, we can easily say that B will be least basic. So, if I am making the order and I am putting 4 places, okay, in case of B, there is an aromatic delocalization. So, lone pair will never be on the nitrogen atom. So, in that case, B will be having the least basicity. Okay. In C, you have a sp3 lone pair which is localized, and in case of D, you are having 2 lone pairs, out of which this lone pair is delocalized, but this lone pair is localized. Okay. So, since we prefer the more basic lone pair for measuring the basicity, okay, this one is a localized lone pair. So, I can safely say that B will be having the least basicity. Now, if we are talking about A, C and D, okay, sp3 lone pair will be more basic than sp2 or sp lone pair. This is because the higher is the s character in an orbital, more will be its electronegativity and less will be the basicity of the lone pair. So, in that case, the lone pair in the which is localized in an sp3 orbital will be the most basic. So, C will be the most basic. So, you see, the most basic is C, the least basic is B. So, only one option is corresponding to this, which is option number 2. Okay. So, this is the answer. So, the order will be C, D, A and B. Okay. Now, between D and A, you see, after making the cation, the positive charge in pyridine will be localized. But in case of imidazole, this one, if we draw the structure, okay, and I am writing it like this. You see, this positive charge can be delocalized to this nitrogen by this arrangement. Okay, so I can draw a resonating structure something like this. Okay. Where the positive charge has now come from this nitrogen to this nitrogen. Okay. So, you see, since the positive charge is delocalized in the cation becomes more stable due to resonance. So, the cation of D will be more stable. So, D will be consequently more basic than A. So, this is the order C, D, A and B. Okay. So, let us move to the next question. in question number 4, they are asking the most appropriate reagent for conversion of C2H5Cn into C2H5CH2NH2. Okay, so basically the nature of the conversion is something like this. RC triple bond N is reduced to RCH2 NH2. Now when you are talking about the reducing power of this reagent, you see LiAlH4 is the strongest reducing agent among all these 4. Okay, so LiAlH4 will be the most suitable reagent for carrying out this conversion. In fact, if you are talking about the power of reduction of these reagents, LiAlH4 is most powerful, followed by NaBH4, then NaBH3Cn, and last one will be CaH2. Okay, so the most appropriate reagent for this conversion will be LiAlH4. Okay, next question will be question number 5. Okay, now in question number 5, they are considering an equilibrium reaction where N2O4 is giving 2NO2 and delta H is positive. This means that this is an endothermic reaction in forward direction. Okay, so the forward direction is endothermic, so the backward direction will be exothermic. Okay, so for each of the following cases, the direction in which the equilibrium shifts, okay, when A, temperature is decreased, and B, pressure is increased by adding N2 at constant temperature. Okay, so let us do it one by one. First we look into the condition A, which is saying that temperature is decreased. So you see, this is a question of chemical equilibrium, which is under the Le-Chatelier principle topic. Okay, so as per that concept, as temperature increases, the equilibrium shifts in the direction of endothermic reaction, and as temperature decreases, equilibrium shifts in the direction of exothermic reaction. Okay, so you see here we are decreasing the temperature, so the reaction will shift in the direction of exothermic reaction. Now if it is shifting in the direction of exothermic reaction, you see the forward direction is endothermic, so the backward direction will be exothermic. If it is going towards backward direction, then it is going towards your reactants. So if we are decreasing temperature, then it is moving towards the backward, which is towards reactants. So this explains our first part of this question. Second part says that pressure is increased only by adding N2 at constant temperature. Now you see here the reason for increase of pressure is not change in volume. The reason for increase in pressure is because of addition of inert, non-reactive gas. So in this case, along with constant temperature, volume will also be constant. Okay, now you see, if you are adding inert non-reactive gas in an equilibrium at constant volume, there will be no effect on the equilibrium. So addition of non-reactive gas, okay, at constant volume, there will be no change in the equilibrium. Why? Because since the volume is constant, the concentrations of the reactants and products are also constant. So there is no change in the equilibrium in this case. If it was given that the non-reactive gas is added at constant pressure, then there would be a change in the equilibrium. Okay. But here, since the volume is constant, there will be no change. So in the second case, means case B, there will be no change. And in this case, So in the first case it is shifting towards reactant, and in second case there is no change in the equilibrium. So the correct option will be answer 3. Okay. So let's move to the next question, question number 6. The question number 6 says that identify the correct molecular picture which shows what happens at critical micelle concentration of an aqueous solution of a surfactant, okay, under these configurations. Now this is a question of surface chemistry under associated colloids. Okay. So here the 4 configurations are given, and we have to choose which of the configuration corresponds to the CMC formation, micelle formation. Okay. Now see, micelle formation, there are 2 requirements, temperature as well as the critical micelle concentration requirements. Now when micelle formation is taking place, okay, there will be some cluster of surfactant molecules which will be together. Okay, so you see this the cluster will be something like this. Okay, it will be, if I am drawing a micelle cluster, the polar, this represents the polar part and the tail represents the non-polar part of the surfactant molecule. Okay. So a micelle will be looking something like this. So if the micelle formation has taken place, you will be seeing this type of cluster in the diagram. Okay. Now you see, so you see based on the micelle cluster, you can only see them in options C and D very clearly. In B also, the total micelle has not formation has not taken place completely. So answer will be either C or D. The second point which is important is the orientation of the molecules on the surface. Now you see this is the surfactant molecule. Okay, this is the polar part and this is the non-polar part. Now you see the non-polar part, okay, does not like the solvent molecules. Okay, it avoids the polar molecule. So it will always try to be away from the polar solvent molecules. This means that this should be pointing away from the water molecules, means this should be up. In option D, the non-polar part is facing away from the solvent molecules. So the correct answer should be this one. So D corresponds to option number 2. So that is the correct answer. So this concludes our question number 6. Question number 7. Okay, which of the following is not an essential amino acid? Now you see, the answer for this will be tyrosine. It is a fact-based question which you know. So now how to remember this is a very, you know, like a complicated thing for a lot of students. So I will be giving you a simple mnemonic to remember it. So you see there is a phrase known as something like that. Private Tim Hall. Okay. Always argues, never tires. Okay, Private Tim Hall never argues, always argues, never tires. Okay, now this mnemonic will give you all the 10 amino acids along with which one it is representing. So you see, P stands for phenylalanine. V stands for valine. T, okay, stands for tryptophan. This T stands for threonine. Okay, I stands for isoleucine. And stands for methionine. Okay. H stands for histidine. HALN. Okay, these all three will be basic amino acids. A stands for arginine. L stands for lysine. And this L stands for leucine. Now you see, there are multiple amino acids which starts with the word A. Okay, so aspartic acid is also starting with A, and arginine is also starting with A. So you see, the always argues means A represents arginine. Argues is referring towards arginine, and never tires. This means T is not tyrosine. This is important, and this will give you the answer of this question. So you say not an essential amino acid, it will be tyrosine. So the answer is option number 2. Okay, next question is question number 8. Now question number 8 is asking the structure of PCl5 in solid state. Now this is a question of chemical bonding again. Okay, now you see PCl5 in vapor state will be PCl5 will be existing as a trigonal bipyramidal geometry. So it will be something like this. But you see, in solid state, it will be existing in the form of ions which are having uniform hybridization. You see, PCl5 is sp3 dehybridization, which is a non-uniform hybridization. Why? Because it is having two different types of positions, the axial and the equatorial. And we all know that the axial bonds are longer, equatorial bonds are shorter. Okay, so that is why PCl5 is in vapor state is sp3d, which is a non-uniform hybridization. But when it is in solid state, it prefers to be in terms of those ions which are carrying a uniform hybridization. Okay, so in solid state, PCl5 exists in the form of cation, which is PCl4 plus, and anion, which is PCl6 minus. Okay, so if you are drawing a PCl4 plus cation, it will be looking something like this. It will be having a tetrahedral geometry. So in tetrahedral geometry, all the bonds are of equal bond length. So it's a uniform hybridization. Okay, and in PCl6 minus, it is having a octahedral geometry with a sp3d2 hybridization. Okay, so again this is all positions are equivalent, it is a uniform hybridization. So you see, based on these two structure of the ions, we can confidently say that the answer of option 8 will be of question number 8 will be option 4, which is tetrahedral and octahedral. Okay, the only thing here it should be PCl6 minus and this is plus. So answer is option 4. Okay, so this is question number 8. Next is question number 9. Okay, in question number 9, they are asking in the following reaction sequence, the major products A and B are. Okay, so they have given this reaction, which is a reaction of Friedel-Crafts acylation. Okay, and then they are doing Clemenson's reduction, which is ZnHg concentrated HCl, followed by acidification, means by treating with H3PO4. So let us do this question. Now this is a sequential reaction. So we have to do this question in steps. Okay, so you see, first what is going to happen is that this molecule is going to react with AlCl3, which is a Lewis acid. Okay, and what is going to happen is that we are going to get OAlCl3 minus. Now this is my electrophile here. This is going to attack this xylene molecule. This is orthoxylene. Okay, so if I am doing it here, then this positive charge is going to attack one of the positions, which is para with respect to the CH3 group. Okay, now here there are two such positions. With respect to this is a para position. With respect to this CH3 group, this is a para position. So we can, and both positions are equivalent, so the attack can take place at either of these two positions. Okay, so when this is attacking here, we'll be getting this as the resultant molecule. Okay. Okay, OAlCl3 minus. Okay, so we'll be getting this as the, now after all this step, we add water to neutralize all the charges. So on adding of water, which is not mentioned here, but it should be there, you'll be getting this as the product. So the water work is done to neutralize all the charges. So you will be getting COH like this. Now you see this is your product A. Okay. Now what we are doing is that we are doing Clemenson's reduction, which is zinc amalgam and concentrated HCl. Now Clemenson's reduction will only affect the aldehyde group. It won't affect the carboxylic acid group. Okay. So if only this group is getting affected, then we will be getting this molecule. This will get converted into CH2. So I am directly writing it like this. Okay. One minute. Okay. So after Clemenson's reduction, I will be getting this molecule. Now when you are using H3PO4, H3PO4 is basically a source of H+. So this H+ is going to, protonate the carbonyl group. So what I will be getting will be another electrophile. Okay, so you will be getting OH here, and a plus charge here. There is a carbon here. Okay, and this carbon will be attacking this part of the molecule to complete the ring. Okay, so what we will be getting finally will be something like this. You see, you will be getting two OH groups on the same carbon, which will dehydrate to give the carbonyl group. So ultimately the molecule B will be something like this. Okay, so you see our four options. This is my option A, which is having a COH group and a C double bond O group, and in option B I am only having a complete ring with a C double bond O group. Okay, so my correct option is option number 4. Okay, based on this. Okay. In question number 10, my question is a diatomic molecule X2 has a BCC structure with a cell edge of 300 picometers. The density of the molecule is 6.17 gram per cc, and they are asking the number of molecules which will be present in 200 grams of X2. Okay, now you see here this is a question of solid state where the density equation has to be used. Now you see, that the BCC structure is given. So the average number of molecules per unit cell will be 2. Okay, so let me just write the density equation. The density equation rho is given as Z into mW by Na into A cube, where A is the edge of the unit cell. Okay, now you see in this equation rho is given to us for BCC unit cell. The value of Z, which is the average number of unit molecules in a unit cell, that is equal to 2. Okay, and Na is the Avogadro's number and A is given to be 300 picometers. So the value of A is 300 picometers. Okay, which is 3 into 10 to the power minus 8 centimeter. Okay, now we have to use these values in this density equation. So let us write it. Okay, Z is 2 into MW is something which we need to find out by Na. Na is 6 into 10 to the power 23 into A. The value of A is 3 into 10 to the power minus 8 to the power 3. Okay. Now you see when we are solving it, the value of rho is given to be 6.17. So I can write 6.17, okay, is equal to 2 into MW by 6 into 10 to the power 23, and this will be 10 to the power minus 8 to the power 3 will be 10 to the power minus 24. So 10 to the power minus 24 into 10 to the power 23 will be 10 to the power minus 1. So I will be writing 10 to the power minus 1 into 3 whole cube, which is 27. Okay, now you see this will cancel out like 3 times. Okay, and 27 into 3 will be equal to 81 into 10 to the power minus 1 will be 8.1. So I can write that molar mass will be equal to 6.17 into 8.1. This will be close to 50. So you see the molar mass of X2 molecule is 50 grams. So number of moles of X2 in 200 grams will be given by 200 by 50, that is equal to 4 moles of X2. Now you see 4 moles of X2 is basically 4 Na, 1 minute, 4 Na molecules of X2. Okay, so this is the final answer. The answer will be option 4, which is 4 Na. Okay. Next, we are going to question number 11. Question number 11 says that the condition that indicates a polluted environment is, there are 4 options given for this question. Option 1 is the pH of rainwater to be 5.6. Second, eutrophication. Third, 0.03% of CO2 in the atmosphere. And fourth, BOD value of 5 ppm. Now you see, we have to, this is a question of environmental chemistry and we have to analyze each options one by one. Okay, so question number, option 1, pH of rainwater to be 5.6. That is the correct option. Why? Because you see the rainwater is slightly acidic due to the presence of CO2, which is an acidic oxide. Okay, so the pH of natural rainwater is 5.6. Okay, option 2, eutrophication. Now, this is a correct answer. Why? Because you see, eutrophication is basically excessive growth of algae and algal blooms when the water is having very high concentration of nutrients. Now that is happening because of excessive use of fertilizers, okay, which are causing very excess concentration of nitrates and phosphates in water, which is promoting the growth of algae. Okay, so you must have seen that ponds which are covered with green colored plants. Okay, that is eutrophication. And you see, due to eutrophication, what happens is that the dissolved oxygen content will be decreasing as the what you say as the outer oxygen is not able to enter the water. Okay. So in that case, less dissolved oxygen will be available for marine life and they will be dying. So that indicates a polluted environment. So the correct answer should be option 2 only. Okay, but you say let us analyze the other two options also. 0.03% of CO2 in the atmosphere, that is the correct option, because in a regular air your proportion of CO2 is 0.03% only. Option 4, BO2 value of 5 ppm. A water sample is assumed to be a clean sample if the BO2 value is less than or equal to 5 ppm. If it is for a polluted water sample, the BOD value will be something greater than 17 ppm. Okay, so this, if it is 5 ppm, this means that my water sample is a clean sample. So after analyzing all the 4 options, the correct option is still option 2 only. Okay, so next is question number 12. Question number 12 says that the difference between the radii of third and fourth orbits of Li2 plus is delta R1. The difference between the radii of third and fourth orbits of He plus is delta R2. Okay, then what will be the ratio of delta R1 to delta R2? Now this is a question which is related to Bohr's model of atomic structure. Okay, so let us do this question. You see, in Bohr's model, the radius of the nth orbit is given by A naught n squared by z, where z represents the atomic number of the ion and A naught is equal to 0.53 angstrom, which represents the radius of ground state orbit of hydrogen atom. Okay, and its value is like 0.53 angstrom. Now here we have to calculate delta R1 and delta R2 for the given ion. So let us first write for Li2 plus. Now for Li2 plus, the value of Z will be equal to 3. Okay, and delta R1 is basically R4 minus R3. Okay, so that will be equal to A naught by Z value for Li2 plus will be 3. R4 will be n is equal to 4. This means it will be 4 square minus 3 square. Okay, so that will be equal to 7 A naught by 3. When I am talking about Li2 plus, He plus, for He plus, the value of Z will be equal to 2. Okay, so if you are calculating delta R in this case, it will be again R4 by minus R3, but the value of Z will be changing here. So it will be equal to 2 here. So it will be A naught by 2 into 4 square minus 3 square. Okay, so this will be equal to 7 A naught by 2. Now you see we have calculated delta R1 as well as delta R2. Okay, we don't need to put the value of A naught because they are asking the ratio. So delta R1 by delta R2 will be equal to 7 A naught by 3 by 7 A naught by 2. Okay, so this will come out to be 2:3. So you see the correct answer among all these 4 options will be option 3. Okay, pause. Next is question number 13. Now in question number 13, it is asking which of the following derivatives of alcohols is unstable in an aqueous base. Okay, now when we are talking aqueous base, this means we are talking about a solution which is containing an OH minus ion. So basically we have to check which of the following compound will actually react with a base or OH minus. Then it will be unstable in aqueous solution. Now for this question, the answer will be option 3 because it is an ester. Okay, so you see esters have a tendency to undergo hydrolysis in aqueous solution. So let me write the equation first. Okay, you see suppose I am having CH3, C, double bond O and OR. Okay, and I am putting it in aqueous solution. What will happen that this will attack here and this will go out. So I will be getting CH3, C, double bond O, OH plus RO minus. And then the RO minus will take this proton because carboxylic acid is an acid, and you will be finally getting CH3, C double bond O minus plus ROH. Okay, so if you see, in this case the ester is reacting with the base in an alkaline medium, so it won't be stable in the alkaline medium. Okay, so in this case the correct option will be option 3. Okay, next question is question number 14. In the 6th period, the orbitals that are filled are. Now this is a question related to periodic table. Okay, now you see, in periodic table the concept is that each period start with s orbital and ends with p orbital. Okay, so if I am talking about first period, okay, the first period will be starting with 1s and it is ending with 1s because there is no p orbital for n is equal to 1. But you see, suppose we are talking about second period, it will be starting with 2s and it will be ending with 2p. Okay, similarly third period, it will be starting with 3s and ending with 3p. Okay, now if we are talking about the 6th period, it will be starting with 6s and it will be ending with 6p. Between 6s and 6p, as per the Aufbauer's principle, 2 more orbitals will come. That will be the 4f and 5d. Okay, so if we look into the option, okay, the correct option which is representing this sequence of orbitals is option number 4. So the answer is option number 4. Okay, after this question, next question is question number 15. Okay, now in question number 15, the question is, a flask contains a mixture of 2 compounds A and B. Both compounds decompose by first order kinetics and their half-lives are 300 seconds and 180 seconds respectively. If the concentrations of A and B are equal initially and the time required for the concentration of A to be 4 times the concentration of B will be. Okay, so they are asking what will be the time in which A becomes 4 times the concentration of B. Now you see, my equations are something like A is giving products and B is also giving products, and in both cases the concentrations are changing as per the first order kinetics. Now I see, if the first order kinetic equation is always A is equal to A naught e to the power minus kt. Okay, this is the general equation for first order kinetics. Okay, so if I am writing it for A, I can write the equation as A is equal to A naught e to the power minus, I have to mention Ka into T, and B will be varying as per B naught e to the power minus Kb into T. Okay, now you see, another informations are given, the half-lives are mentioned. Okay, so you see, when I am talking about half-lives, okay, then I can write that T half is equal to ln2 by K. Okay, T half is inversely proportional to K. Okay, and the second thing which is very important is that it is given that initially the concentration of A and B are same. This means that concentration of A naught and B naught are same, and after time t, the concentration of A is 4 times the concentration of B. So I can write that concentration of A is 4 times concentration of B. Okay. So you see, if if I say that this is my equation 1 and this is my equation 2, and I am dividing equation 1 by equation 2, okay, then it will be something like concentration of A by concentration of B will be equal to A naught by B naught e to the power minus KT by e to the power minus KBT. Okay. Now you see, concentration of A by concentration of B will be 4. This value will be equal to 4 and this value will be equal to 1 because A naught is equal to B naught. So they will cancel out. Okay. So it will be 1 into e to the power KB minus KA into T. Okay. Now if I take ln on both sides, then I will be getting ln 4 that is equal to KB minus KA into T. Okay. Now ln 4 can be written as 2 ln 2. Okay. So 1 minute. Okay. So ln 4 can be written as 2 ln 2. Okay. And you see T half is equal to ln 2 by K. So I can write K is equal to ln 2 by T half. So if I am writing it like this, then KB can be written as ln 2 by T half of B minus ln 2 by T half of A, and this into T. Okay, now you see ln 2 is common, so it will get cancelled out. Okay, so I can write 2 is equal to 1 by T half of B minus 1 by T half of A into T. Okay, now you see I am shifting this whole calculation this side. If I put the value of T half of B, now T half of B is 180 seconds and T half of A is given to be 300 seconds. So if we are putting the values here, okay, then I can write, okay, so you see if I am shifting the equations here, then 2 is equal to T half of B 1 by T half of B is 1 by 180 minus 1 by 300 into T. Okay, so 2 can be written as 120 by 180 into 300 into T, or T can be written as 360 into 300 by 120. So this will go like 3 times, so it will be 900 seconds. So you see out of these 4 options, it's the option 3 which corresponds to the answer 900 seconds. So answer is option 3. Next is question number 16. The question number 16 is asking the increasing order of acidity of alpha hydrogen of the following compounds is. Okay, now you see we are given 4 keto forms and we have to decide which case the acidity of alpha hydrogen will be maximum. Now you see the concept is that acidity of alpha hydrogen is directly proportional to the stability of carbanion. So we have to see the alpha hydrogen and we have to remove it and we have to make the carbanion and then we have to check its stability. So you see we are having the 4 molecules. Okay, I will be drawing the carbanions. So in the first case the carbanion will be something like this, CH2 minus. Okay, this is carbanion in case of A. In case of B, the carbanion is something like this. Okay, in case of C, the carbanion is something like this. And in case of D, the carbanion is something like this. Now you see, in all these four cases, I want to delocalize this negative charge. Okay, so if I am able to delocalize this negative charge, then the carbanion will be more stabilized due to resonance, and hence the acidity of alpha hydrogens will be increasing. So let us start with A. Now you see, in case of A, I can delocalize it like this. So this negative charge can be fully delocalized into the carbonyl oxygen. In this case, I can delocalize it like this, I can delocalize it like this. So there is even more delocalization of negative charge here. So in this case, I can only delocalize it like this, but you see here there is a cross conjugation from oxygen lone pair also. Okay, and in this case, you can delocalize it like this, but then there is a cross conjugation from nitrogen lone pair. Okay, so you see, more is the delocalization of the negative charge, more will be the stability of the carbanion. So going by this, this is B, this is C, and this is D. B will be what you say is the most stable carbanion. Why? Because it is going the maximum what you say is delocalization. So I can always say that B will be most acidic. Okay, and after that, in case of A, there is a simple conjugation. There is no cross conjugation in case of A. While in case of C and D, the carbanion is destabilized because there is less resonance less delocalization of the negative charge due to cross conjugation. Okay, so obviously C and D will be having less stability than A. So after B, it will be A. Then between C and D, both cases the cross conjugation is taking place. In first case, the oxygen lone pair is involved in cross conjugation. In second case, nitrogen lone pair is involved in cross conjugation. Now you see, the nitrogen lone pair is more basic, so the cross conjugation will be more in case of nitrogen. So that will give the least stable carbanion. So D will be the least stable, and obviously this position will be occupied by C. So my order is B greater than A, greater than C, greater than D. So the correct option corresponding to this is option number 4. So this is the answer. Okay, so after this, next is question number 17. Okay, now in question number 17, it is asking the correct electronic configuration and spin only magnetic moment of GD3+. Now this is the question of F block, means transition elements. Okay, so let us do this question. Now you see, when you are talking about gadolinium is having the configuration xenon. After that, it is 4F7, okay, 5D1 and 6S2. Okay, this is the configuration of gadolinium. If I am writing GD3+, then I will be removing the outer electrons first. So then the resultant configuration will be xenon 4F7. Okay, because 3 electrons if we are removing, first we will be removing the electron from the outermost orbital, which is the 6s. So 2 electrons from 6s and the third electron will be from 5d. So GD3+ will be having this configuration. Now you see, 4F7 is a half-filled configuration in which all the 7 orbitals are singly occupied. Okay, so if I am drawing the 4F7 configuration, 1, 2, 3, oh sorry, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is the 4F7 configuration. Okay, and xenon in the xenon core, all the electrons will be paired. So you see GT3 plus will have 7 unpaired electrons. Okay, so the value of unpaired electrons is 7. So the spin only magnetic moment is given by this formula n into n plus 2. So it will be under root of 7 into 9, and that will be equal to root of 63. Now root of 63 will be something less than 8, so it will be 7.9. So you see, out of these 4 options, okay, the configuration, the correct configuration is xenon 4F7, okay, and the correct magnetic moment is 7.9. So option 3 corresponds to the correct option. So this is question number 17. Next is question number 18. Now in question number 18, it is a question of related to thermodynamics of metallurgy, okay, which is in which we study about Ellingham diagrams. So the question is, an Ellingham diagram provides information about, there are 4 options given for that. Option 1, the temperature dependence of the standard gives free energy of formation of some metal oxides. Second, the condition of pH and potential under which a species is thermodynamically stable. Third, the pressure dependence of standard electrode potentials of reduction reactions involved in extraction of metals. And fourth, it is given that the kinetics of reduction process. Now you see, first of all, Ellingham diagram concerns with thermodynamics of reduction process. So option 4 cannot be correct. The correct answer will be option number 1. Ellingham diagram basically is a plot between delta G naught, formation of metal oxide, okay, versus temperature, and it is, this delta G naught is for 1 mole of oxygen. Okay, this delta G naught value is calculated for 1 mole of oxygen. Okay, so you see, my metal oxide formation reaction will be something like M plus O2 giving MO2. So the delta G naught for the Gibbs free energy change for this reaction will be representing the delta G naught formation of the metal oxide. Okay, and the plot of this versus temperature will give us the Ellingham diagram. So the correct option will be option number 1. Okay, so this brings to question number 19. Okay, now question number 19 says that the equation that represents the water gas shift reaction is which of the following. Now this is a fact based question, okay, which is related to preparation of hydrogen gas. Now you see, for the commercial or the industrial preparation of hydrogen gas, we use the water gas shift reaction. So the water gas shift reaction is basically CO plus H2O gives CO2 plus H2. So you see, in this reaction, hydrogen gas is produced in commercial quantities. Okay, so you see, this is an improvement over the previous reaction, which was basically when steam is passed over red hot coke. Okay, so C plus so this is your water gas shift reaction. So the correct answer is option A. Okay, so this is question number 19. Next is question number 20. If a person is suffering from deficiency of noradrenaline, what kind of drug should be suggested? Now, this is a question from chemistry in everyday life under the drugs and medicine section. Okay, now you see, noradrenaline is a neurotransmitter. Okay, and this is this chemical is basically responsible for, you know, the brain's signal activity. So if this substance is deficient in human body, this means that the brain signal activity will be very less, and the person, if the brain signal activity is less, this means that the central nervous system is depressed, and so the overall person will be suffering from mild depression symptoms if there is a deficiency of noradrenaline. So in order to treat this condition, we should be giving that person antidepressant like Prozac or Zoloft, these type of medicines. So the correct answer for this question will be option 1. We should be giving them antidepressant. So this is question number 20. Next is question number 21. Is asking the minimum number of moles of O2 required for complete combustion of 1 mole of propane and 2 moles of butane is. Now this is a question of eudometry. Okay, so let us we have to write the equations for combustion of propane and butane. So let us write it. Okay, so propane is C3H8 plus O2, and you will be getting CO2 plus H2O. When you are balancing it, there are 8 hydrogens, so 4 H2O, 3 carbons, so 3 CO2. Now total number of oxygen atoms will be 6 plus 4, 10, so it will be 5 O2 here. Okay, so if you are using 1 mole of propane, then it will be reacting with 5 mole of oxygen. Okay, now next we have to write it for butane also. C4H10 plus O2 giving 4 CO2 plus 5 H2. So you see total number of oxygen atoms is 13. So here we will be putting 6.5 O2. Now here we are using 2 moles of butane. Now 2 moles of butane, 1 mole is reacting with 6.5 moles of O2. So 2 moles of butane will react with 13 moles of O2. Now you see, I am having 5 moles here and 13 moles here. So total number of moles of oxygen will be 18 moles. So the answer will be 18. Okay, so this is question number 21. Now question number 22 is a soft drink was bottled with a partial pressure of CO2 at 3 bar over liquid at room temperature. The partial pressure of CO2 over the solution approaches a value of 30 bar when 44 grams of CO2 is dissolved in 1 kg of water at room temperature. It is asking the approximate pH of soft drink. Okay, now you see this is a question which is a combination of Henry's law from liquid solution as well as the ionic equilibrium, okay, the polyprotic acid dissociation. So let us see how we are going to do this question. Okay, now you see, as per Henry's law, okay, weight of gas which is dissolved in a given quantity of aqueous solution is directly proportional to the pressure of the gas above the solution. So suppose I am having this as aqueous solution, okay, and I am having like CO2 gas here, then there will be bubbles of CO2 which will be dissolved inside the aqueous solution. The weight of CO2 bubbles inside the aqueous solution will be directly proportional to the pressure of CO2 on the surface of the aqueous solution. So weight of gas is directly proportional to pressure of CO2. Okay. Now if we are taking like 1 kg of water, okay, I can write Wg1 by Wg2. That will be equal to pressure of CO2 in first case by pressure of CO2 in second case. Now it is given that when your pressure is 30 bar, you are able to dissolve 44 grams of CO2. So you see 44 by, let us say that in second case you are dissolving W grams of CO2 in 1 kg of solvent. In first case your pressure is 30 bar and second case it is 3 bar. So from this the value of W will come out to be 4.4 grams. Okay, so you see, if I am talking about how much is the concentration of CO2 in the aqueous solution, okay, then we have to first calculate the weight of the solution. Now the weight of the solution, see 1 kg of water means 1000 grams of water plus you are having 4.4 grams of CO2. Okay, so the total weight of the solution will be weight of solvent plus weight of CO2, that is 1004.4 grams. Okay. Now you see, if we are talking about the density of the solution, density is given to be 1 gram per ml. So volume of the solution will be 1004.4 ml or 1.0044 liter. So you see, if I am talking about the concentration of CO2, that will be also equal to concentration of H2CO3, okay, and that will be equal to number of moles by volume in liters. Okay, so if I am talking about number of moles of CO2, now you see 4.4 grams of CO2, that will be representing 0.1 moles of CO2. Okay, we have to just divide it by its molar mass, which is 44. Okay, so the concentration of CO2 will be also the concentration of H2CO3, and that will be 0.1 by volume is 1.0044. So that will be close to 0.1 molar only. Okay, now we know the concentration of the acid H2CO3. Now in aqueous solution, H2CO3 will be dissociating as per this equation. H2CO3 is giving H plus HCO3 minus. And the acid dissociation constant for this step is K. Now you see, it is a polyprotic acid, but you see they have only given the first dissociation constant, which is very correct, because the rule is that in a polyprotic acid dissociation, the H plus concentration is always decided by the first step itself. The contribution of other steps towards H plus concentration is negligible. Okay, so if we are only considering the first step contribution, then the concentration of H plus, we can directly use the formula under root of Ka1 into C. So Ka1 will be 4 into 10 to the power minus 7 into 0.1. So this will come out to be 2 into 10 to the power minus 4. So pH will come out to be 4 minus log 2, it will be 3.7 or 37 into 10 to the power minus 1. So the correct answer here will be 37. Okay, so this is the whole solution to this question. Okay, so this is question number 22. Next is question number 23. Question number 23 is asking the number of chiral carbons present in peptide isoleucine, arginine, proline. Okay, now you see a polypeptide bond will be something like having or this CONH okay, so on this side it will be NH2, the N terminal, and one minute, and this will be So 1, 2, and this will be COH. 1 minute. Okay, so you see it is a tripeptide, so it will be containing 2 peptide bonds. Okay, now you see the chirality will be only due to the will not be due to the peptide bonds. It will be because of this part of the molecule. Okay, so we have to check these 3 centers in order to see the number of chiral centers. So you see, when you are talking about isoleucine, its structure will be something like this. Okay, so isoleucine will be something like this. Okay, so you say this is containing 2 chiral centers. Okay, so you say this atom is represented here in the structure. Okay, so the COH will be forming the peptide bond with the arginine here. Similarly, for arginine is a basic amino acid, so its structure is something like this: NH2, C, double bond NH, NH, then you are having like 3 carbon atoms. Okay, and then you are having NH2, COH. Okay, so this here the only chiral center is this carbon atom. Okay, and in case of proline, is basically a 5-membered ring. And this is connected to COH and NH2. So now when you are talking about the chiral carbon atoms, I have denoted them by stars. You see, in case of isoleucine, this chiral carbon and this carbon, there are 2 chiral carbon centers. Okay, in case of arginine, there is only 1 chiral carbon center, which is here. And in case of proline, again there is only 1 chiral carbon center, which is this. So the total number of chiral carbon in this tripeptide will be equal to 4, and that is the answer. Okay, so this brings to question number 24. An oxidation reduction reaction in which 3 electrons are transferred has a delta G naught value of 17.37 kilojoule per mole at 25 degrees centigrade. The value of E naught cell is, now this is a question of electrochemistry, basically related to the thermodynamic part of the electrochemistry. So you see, we can write delta G naught is equal to minus of NF E naught. Okay, E naught cell. So I can write E naught cell is equal to minus of delta G naught by N into F. Okay, now you see the values are given to us. Delta G naught value is 17.37 kilojoule per mole inverse. You see, delta G naught is 17.37 kilojoule per mole, and the value of F is given to be 96,500. So we have to put these 2 values here. So if I am putting, we have to convert kilojoule into joules. So it will be 17.37 into 10 to the power 3 with a negative sign by N is given to be 3 into 96,500. Okay, so if you do the calculation, it will come out to be minus of 0.06, and this I can write it as minus 6 into 10 to the power minus 2. So you see here it should be, the answer should be minus 6. So the correct answer for this question is minus 6. Okay, so this is the calculation. It is a very simple calculation here. Okay, so next is the last question of this paper, which is question number 25. The total number of coordination sites in ethylene diamine tetraacetate EDTA4 minus. Now you see, this is a ligand which is used for trapping calcium 2 plus and magnesium 2 plus ions in aqueous solution. Okay, so you know it is used for removal, quantitative estimation of hardness of water. So let us look, it's a hexadentate ligand. Okay, 1 minute. EDTA4 minus is a hexadentate ligand. So its denticity will be 6. So the number of coordination sites in ethylene diamine tetraacetate should be 6. But let us look into the structure. If we are, you know, how to find those sites. So you see, first we have to draw ethylene diamine. So you see, this is N and this is ethylene diamine. Now you see, this nitrogen will be having a lone pair, which is a site. This is a lone pair, which is a site, donor site. Then tetraacetate is CH2, C double bond O, O minus. Okay, then CH2, C double bond O, O minus. Okay, here also CH. Tetraacetate means there will be like 4 acetate groups. Okay. Okay, so when you are talking about the coordination sites, this will be giving 1 lone pair, 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 and this will be giving 1 lone pair. So as you can see, the number of coordination sites is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So the correct answer is 6. So with this, the last question of this paper is done. Okay, with this we have finished the paper discussion for this paper. Okay, now just like every year, this time also Sri Chaitanya IIT Academy has students have done excellent in this JEE Mains phase. We have more than 50 students getting 100 percentiles in physics, chemistry and maths individually, and overall result is also very good this time. Okay. Now we are going to start some new batches for +1, +2, as well as the long term for the long term students. And for the details, you should contact the nearest Chaitanya branch. And please do not delay because the time is very important. Okay, with this I am ending the paper discussion. Thank you.